Good afternoon. My name is Thomas Seneca. I'm the founding partner of TM Wealth Management. And thank you for taking the time to meet with us today during our webinar about the one-page financial plan. I'll go ahead and get my screen shared here for you so you can see the slides. We don't have time today to take questions, but there will be an opportunity at the end for you to fill out a survey to both request some of the materials that I'll talk about today, some of the resources, and also request a copy of the slides if that's helpful to you. Our focus and philosophy here at TM Wealth Management is continually to add value and to educate so that people can make an informed decision about what's best for them. And when we meet with individual potential clients, it's all about trying to find the right fit. We don't do sales. We don't try to force something, a round peg or a square peg into a round hole. We really want to be helpful in helping people make a good decision for them. And hopefully today you'll get some information that you can apply. If you have questions, we're always here and happy to help. There'll be some ways you can reach out to us at the end of our webinar today so that we can be helpful to you in making a good financial decision. So let's go ahead and get started as we talk about the one-page financial plan. And I'll go ahead and share my screen here for you so that you can see the presentation. So hopefully now what you're able to see is our PowerPoint presentation as we talk about the one-page financial plan. As we look at some disclosures, I want to make sure that you're aware that what we're presenting here is more education. It's not tax or legal advice. And any information that you garner here, we encourage you to meet with your professionals. If you don't have any professionals, we'd be happy to meet with you and help you apply this specific information to you. And then just a little bit about me. I grew up here in the Northern Virginia area, and ultimately I grew up wanting to be an investment banker. I've always tried to go back and ask my parents, where did that come from? And ultimately I accomplished that goal, went to graduate school at Columbia in Manhattan, worked for Goldman Sachs and Deutsche Bank on Wall Street and also out in San Francisco. And I learned two important things about that experience. One is being an investment banker is not conducive to a family. And so that was really important to me. And the second thing that I learned, also very important, was that the investment banking profession is very transactional, right? We're doing an IPO, we're doing an M&A transaction. We do it and then we're on to the next one. And for me, I needed to feel like I was doing something that was meaningful, that was fulfilling, that was having a positive impact in people's lives. And for me, that meant transitioning from investment banking to wealth management, where I sit across from families and individuals to help them make good financial decisions. And I found that very rewarding and very fulfilling, and be happy to do that with you if that would be beneficial. And then a little bit about TM Wealth Management. And as the founding partner, the structure was very deliberate and informed. And one of the key things that I wanted to make sure as we provided financial advice is that we were independent, that we weren't being directed by a home office about what strategy we needed to focus on and how we wanted to deliver the service to our clients. We are independent and we work for our clients. The second thing was important to me was boutique, or on the smaller side. At Goldman Sachs and Deutsche Bank, these are large, what are referred to as bulge bracket investment banks, large multinational, thousands of employees, even more clients. And for me, it was very difficult to see how you can add value to that many clients on a consistent basis. And so for us, we wanted to make sure that we kept it relatively small, meaning that we can sit down with each individual client, spend the time necessary, and go deep with them, learn a lot more about their overall financial situation than just, hey, what's your portfolio look like? And that was important to us. The second piece that was important was wealth management, right? So you get a lot of folks that offer financial advice, and they only focus on the assets or the portfolio that they're being asked to manage. And that's kind of putting blinders on. And as we look at it, there's a lot more going on in individuals and families' financial lives than just their portfolios. They've got estate planning needs, tax planning needs, insurance needs, all of these different areas that we want to spend time on to make sure that we're making good financial decisions in totality as a holistic wealth management solution rather than just let's focus on the portfolio. And then lastly, the important piece was registering as a fiduciary. Now, you might think that, well, isn't every person offering financial advice a fiduciary? And I wish that it was that case, but that's not the case. There's different standards under which insurance professionals or brokers or other folks that are offering financial advice register under. And for us, it was important that we register with the SEC as a fiduciary, meaning that we have a responsibility, a legal obligation to do what's in the best interest of our clients. And so that's an important element that we try and align ourselves with our clients as much as possible and make sure that our interests are aligned with them. Okay, so that's a little bit about me and a little bit about our firm. Now let's delve into the topic. And where I started to really understand the importance of financial planning is when I read about a story about Jack Whitaker. So Jack was from West Virginia, had a very successful construction company. And in 2002, he bought himself a Powerball ticket. And at that time, it was the largest Powerball jackpot in history. And Jack won that Powerball jackpot December 26, 2002. Jack and his family won $315 million, right? Very exciting. You can see Jack's here in the black hat. His wife is just barely visible behind the great check. His one and only granddaughter is there with him. And on the very far end is his daughter. And this was a very happy day, obviously, right? Jack had achieved something that we all strive for, right? Maybe not $315 million, but complete financial independence. Jack was no longer worried, can I pay the bills? Can I pay my mortgage? Can I pay for college? And will I ever run out of money? And can I do this or that? He had complete financial independence. And the tragedy of the story was 2 years later, after Jack had won the Powerball, he was interviewed by ABC News. And he said at that time, I wish I had torn the ticket up. He didn't want the $315 million. And that was, as I read this story, it was just shocking to me that here he had achieved what we all strive for, complete financial independence. 2 years later, said, I didn't want it. I wish it had never happened to me. And so it took me down a path to really start to figure out what was going on here, not just with Jack, right? You think about, professional athletes, right? They get a large lump sum of money, and unfortunately, the vast majority of them, go broke. Same thing with most lottery winners, right? They blow the money. And so a lot of us, I work with a lot of folks that make poor financial decisions. So I was trying to figure out what was going on. And there's a key element that came out of this. It really was understanding that the more emotional something is, the less sensible we become. And so if you think about money, right, all it is a representation of the things that are important to us, right? It represents our sacrifice, our time, the future that we hope that we'll be able to have, and the things that we'll be able to do with those resources. And going back a little bit to Jack's story, what ultimately happened when he won the Powerball is he ended up giving his favorite and only granddaughter, bought her multiple cars, and gave her a $2,000 a month allowance. So here's a teenager in high school that has, complete freedom, both independent and financial freedom to go do what she wants, and ultimately got into with the wrong crowd and ultimately died of a drug overdose. His daughter obviously was no longer interested in talking to him and engaging with him in a relationship because of the trauma and tragedy of losing her only daughter. He was going through a divorce at that point, and the money did not have the impact that he had hoped. And so it was a very emotional thing, right? Of course, he loved his granddaughter, didn't want anything to happen to her, but he had these resources, says, great, let me give you $2,000 a month and a couple of cars. Now, you would think that that's a demonstration of love, but it's an emotional decision. Anyone looking at it from the outside said, well, hey, that's probably not a good idea to give a teenager multiple cars and that much cash. And it's a key thing to remember is that emotions can be hazardous to your wealth. And we're going to talk a little about how that factors into planning, but this led me down the path to really understand behavioral finance. And behavioral finance seeks to explain the decisions of investors by combining insights from psychology, sociology, and finance. So my undergraduate degree is in economics. And you'll see here, when we talk about behavioral finance, it says behavioral finance is focused not on economic theory. When I first read that, I was like, well, what's wrong with economic theory? I spent, 4 years of my life studying economics. I think it was a great discipline and set me up in terms of problem solving and decision making, understand how the economy works. But there is a key element, an assumption in economic theory. And that assumption is that we as individuals are utility maximizing rational decision makers. And what that means is we look to make the best decision that is in our best interests. And what behavioral finance has found is that we don't always make the utility maximizing best decision because there's more that goes into our decision making than rational decision making. And so it says it does not focus on economic theory, but instead on how people actually behave in real world financial situations. It assumes that investors are not always logical and can easily make irrational decisions when there are no systems in place to remind them of the priorities they've set and plans they've established. I want to highlight those, right? We can easily make poor financial decisions when there's no systems in place, right? There's nothing in place to help remind us of what it is we're trying to accomplish. And it also says to remind us of the priorities we've set and the plans we have established. So if we want to make good financial decisions, we've got to remind ourselves, we have to have a system in place to remind us of what are our priorities and what are our plans for the resources that we have. If we can utilize this behavioral finance philosophy, now we can have something in place to make sure that we're optimizing our financial decision making. And it's important to understand as our, kind of how our brains make decisions, right? This is the simplified graphic, obviously, of our brains. And, looking at it from the back, this is our left brain, right? The analytical brain. You've got all these people sitting in cubes. And then the right brain, the more creative, emotional side of our decision making. And on the rational side, automatic emotions focus on the most immediate variables. The rational brain is able to expand the list of possibilities. And on the emotional side, financial decision making is not necessarily about money. It is also about intangible motives like avoiding regret or achieving pride. So there's more that goes into our decision making than just what's best. And there was a study that was done, I believe this was done at MIT, between two different groups of students. And so the study was, it brought a group of students in individually into the lab and said, hey, we'd like you to memorize 7 numbers. They'd give them the 7 numbers, and then they'd say, oh, once you've got the 7 numbers memorized, please go out of the lab, down the hall to the other room, and repeat your 7 numbers to the lab assistant. And oh, by the way, in the hall, there's a table of some cake and some fruit. So please help yourself either to cake or fruit. So that was the experiment. Bring students in individually, ask them to memorize 7 numbers, send them out the hall, have them choose cake or fruit. They brought a second group of students in and they said, we'd like you to memorize 2 numbers. Once you have your 2 numbers memorized, please go out the hall and down to the other lab assistant and repeat your numbers. And oh, by the way, in the middle or in the hall is some cake or fruit. Please help yourself either to cake or fruit. So this was the experiment. 2 different groups one group had to memorize 7 numbers, another group had to memorize 2 numbers, and one group, the group of 7 or the group of 2, one group overwhelmingly chose cake. And so think to yourself, which group do you think overwhelmingly chose cake? Was it the group that had memorized 7 numbers, or was it the group that had memorized 2 numbers? And this experiment illustrates kind of this argument that goes on in our brain, right? The left brain versus right brain. Left brain is very rational. Right brain is very instinctive. Let me avoid pain and find pleasure is kind of how the right brain reacts. And so the outcome was the participants that had to memorize 7 numbers overwhelmingly chose cake. And the group that only had to memorize 2 numbers overwhelmingly chose fruit. So if you think about this, what happens to the group that chose cake is 7 numbers is enough to engage our left brain. It's busy trying to remember these 7 numbers. It can't regulate that emotional, instinctive decision-making that goes on in our right brain. So for me, it would be, if I have, 2 numbers, 2 numbers, easy, no stress here. I see cake or fruit. I first reach for the cake. I'm like, ooh, that I like cake. Cake makes me happy. And then my left brain kicks in and says, hey, wait a minute. You're trying to watch your weight. If you eat the cake, you're probably gonna have to run a little bit longer on the treadmill. Let's choose fruit, right? If I only have to memorize two numbers. When my left brain is busy and engaged, it can't provide that regulation on my instinctive, let me find pain, find pleasure, avoid pain decision making. So one thing to just focus on or highlight here is that emotional decision making is not bad. There's not one that's good or bad, left brain, right brain. It's just we need to understand how we're making decisions so that we can make sure we're regulating those decisions to make the best decision. So if you think about a plan, right? If you're going to take a trip from New York to LA and drive, how many of you would just, or even if you were going to fly, would you just show up at the airport and say, I'm going to buy a ticket. Let me go from New York to LA. Or if you were going to drive, would you just jump in the car and start driving? Maybe, and you could do that. But do you think that if you did that last second without any planning, it might cost you a little bit more? You may not arrive at the time that you wanted to, right? Your path to get there might not be the most efficient path, right? And so most things that we do in our lives, we want to kind of think about, what is my plan? What am I doing? And we talk about financial planning. We want to make sure we have a game plan for the resources that we have so that they can have the largest impact on the people and the causes we care about most. So we want to make sure we have a plan. And one of the key elements to think about a plan, the research has shown that retirement savings investment assets of people that plan is nearly 6 times more than people that don't plan, right? If you think, this applies to every area of our lives, right? If we plan out our meals, we usually eat better, right? If we plan out our workout schedule throughout the week, throughout the month, we usually accomplish that better. And that's not to say that plans don't change or plans can't be adjusted or we completely forget the plan. But at least in an unemotional state, we have made a decision and determination about what we would like the baseline plan to be, so that when decisions come up, it's not, oh my goodness, let me make this snap, irrational, emotional decision. Let me refer back to the plan that I have made. And how does this decision apply to the plan that I made? When I was working in investment banking, one of the key things that we would do in working with companies that were looking to acquire other companies, M&A, do some mergers and acquisitions, is we spent a lot of time helping them develop, what is your acquisition strategy? Who are we looking for? Who's the right fit? Because there were tons of things available to buy, but it may not help with the underlying strategic plan that the company had. So we spent a lot of time saying no to deals because we had this underlying plan to make sure that whatever we were looking at fit the parameters that we had identified in an unemotional state, right? Sometimes you go to an auction, get into a bidding situation for a specific company, or if you're talking about individuals, maybe a specific product, and you get emotionally, involved in the process, right? But if you can have a plan, it helps control those emotions and allows you to answer the question, how does this decision help me accomplish my plan, right? It comes back to what we talked about in behavioral finance, right? We can easily make irrational decisions if there are no systems in place to remind us of our priorities and our plans. And that's what a financial plan does. The challenge with financial planning is a lot of us think of it kind of like, this picture here. What is a financial plan, right? It's very complex. There's a lot going into it, right? I start here. I've got a bunch of decisions. Do I do Roth or traditional? When do I remove, start taking money out? Do I delay Social Security? How should my portfolio be structured? Do I do Roth conversions? What are my tax implications? What about Medicare and the IRMA premiums? And how do it can be very complex. And this is what goes into our minds. And what we want to do is simplify this with the one-page financial plan. And really all we're looking at, when you think about the elements of a plan, if we boil it down to something very simple, it's, where am I today? Where do I want to go? And how do I get between X and Y? How do I get there? right? That's the thought process that you want to have when we boil it down to this. And the overall benefits to a plan is that it significantly reduces the emotional decision making and the financial stress that you might feel, right? And this is a very simplistic graphic here about the time spent worrying about money. If you have no plan, you spend significantly more time worrying about money than if you have a plan, even a one-page plan. Because now it's not so much, oh, I know I should be doing this, or what about this, or, am I missing out on something? So no, let me just execute the plan. And we see this in our practice, right? Nothing has changed in the hour that we spend with someone to help them go through their one-page financial plan. Nothing has changed. Their financial situation is identical. All their money is in the exact same place. But I can just see the level of financial stress go down because now they have a game plan. They know what to do and where to focus their time. And they don't feel like this complex, convoluted situation here where they are trying to make sense of everything. And so what we have done is boil this down into a one-page financial plan, what we call our financial roadmap. And this is it's a large 11 by 17 worksheet that we worked through with you to help you put everything in perspective for you. And I'm going to go through the different elements of this. And at the end of the webinar today, you're more than welcome to request a copy of this. We'll mail that out to you. It's a large worksheet with some instructions that you can do this yourself, right? And it's a valuable exercise for you to help make good financial decisions. And the important element about this is you think about the idea here is creating a financial roadmap for living life on purpose. So making sure that your financial resources are going to the people and causes that you care about. And I like this quote from Mark Kane. He says, there are those who travel and those who are going somewhere. They are different, and yet they are the same. Successful people have this over their rivals. They know where they are going. And that's the whole point of this financial roadmap. It comes back to this graphic here, right? Where do I want to go? In our philosophy within our firm, we think about money as a tool to help us do the things in our lives that we want to do. And we need to tell that tool, that money, what is the job that we want it to help us do? Where do you want to go? And a lot of people, oh, I want to retire. Or, I'm just trying to make as much money as possible. Or, I want to leave some money potentially to my kids. Or, I just don't want to run out of money. These are all great ideas, but what we need to have is a specific written plan, right? At this graphic here, when we talked about people that have a plan has 6 times more assets than people that don't have a plan, this isn't, those people that have a plan isn't, well, I thought about it or I wrote something down on a napkin. It is a formal written plan with objectives and goals and timelines that helps them be more successful than those that don't have a plan. And also stress less about their resources as well. So let's talk a little bit about this one-page financial plan. So if we look at it up in the upper right corner, we start with a concept of what's important to you about money. And we do this if you're in a relationship and have a significant other, we want to talk about this with each individual in the relationship. And this is a good exercise because when we go through this, the one individual is the only one allowed to talk. They get a share without any interruption from the other partner about what's important to them about money. Once they're done, we move on to the other participant and they get to talk uninterrupted by the other partner about what's important to them. And this is really, again, about helping them get on the same page about what they want their resources to do, right? Coming back to this simplified graphic here, making sure that a couple have a shared vision of where they want to go. Doesn't need to be identical, and they'll have different objectives and values, but at least they are now on the same page about where they're going. And so when we talk about this, what's important to you, what we're really trying to emphasize is what do you value, right? And so the idea here is your current financial realities down here, the financial choices that you make, identify the goals that you want to achieve and accomplish, and your values fulfill and satisfy you. They are about being who you would like to be. And so we can develop the best financial plan in the world, but it doesn't help accomplish or align with your values. It's not helpful. It's not accomplishing the goals. So we really, as financial advisors, need to help you communicate to us what is it that you value so that we can make sure that your resources are aligned with your values. And the whole process we go through, right? Here's an illustration between Lynn and Ted. Ted says what's important to him is choice, expression, fulfillment, contribution, compassion, love as a way of life, and serene and simple existence. What you'll notice in both of these, it's not, I want a second home. It's not, we want to travel the world. Those are totally fine values, but those are more goals that you want to accomplish, what you value, right? Usually when somebody says, I want to travel, it's because they want to spend more time with their significant other, having experiences that help them live a full life, right? If we look over here at Lynn, what's important to her is freedom and having variety in her life and sense of balance, able to give freely to others, be the best I can be, and have happiness and peace. These are the things that they want their resources to help them feel and to help them value. And that's an important element. So understanding what your values are and what's really important to you and the impact that you want your resources to have is the very beginning of where do you want to go and what's the journey you want to go on as you strive to accomplish your financial goals. The next element of the one-page financial plan is identifying personal goals and milestones. And these are things that require money and planning. And the idea here is for you now to think about on this journey, what are the milestones that will help you identify that you are on track to accomplishing the things that are important to you. So when we think about the goals of Lynn and Ted, that they've talked about the values here are their specific goals, right? They've got a daughter, Anne. They want to make sure they fund her college, right? And what you see with their specific milestone is they give it a name, Anne's college fund. They give it a specific date that they want to accomplish this goal or milestone. They give a specific dollar amount about what they think this is going to be. I don't know where Anne's going to college for $1,000 a month, but this is probably just their savings for a number of years. And then you'll see at the very bottom here is now let's think about if you've accomplished that goal, what were some of the thoughts or feelings that they would have having accomplished that goal? Because what we're trying to do is not only talk to that left brain, that analytical brain with timelines and numbers and dates and a definition of the goal, but now we want to engage that emotional brain from a positive standpoint and have this goal really be real to them, meaning they'll feel relief, feel proud, and they'll be surprised, hey, we were able to do it. And we go through these specific milestones and goals, things that require money and planning, right? So the other goal might be, hey, we want to buy a farmhouse, right? By 2020, 1.3 million in land, $600,000 house, and we'll be excited, relief, and again, proud. And then their third goal would be financial independence, right? A specific date, the amount that they need a year, and how will they feel about it? So there's an emotional attachment to this goal, because what we want to make sure is that we define a goal or a plan that you are excited about and that you will stick with. And by attaching some of these emotional ideas or feelings around accomplishing these goals, it really ingrains that plan and makes it yours. And now you're excited about accomplishing these specific milestones. Then the last part of the plan is, where am I today? And this is where you bring in, if you're meeting with us or if you're doing this on your own, you want to have all of your financial documents, right? Any statements, any mortgages, any brokerage accounts, any IRAs, any 401ks. You want to have your Social Security statements, any pension benefits. You want to have your estate planning documents, wills, trusts, medical directives, all of those things. Any insurance that you have, long-term care, life insurance. So you can really get a clear snapshot of where am I today from a financial standpoint. And for this couple, it was very simple, right? They had $58,000 in cash, they had a little over $8 million in growth in income assets, and they had about a little less than $2.3 million in debt. That helps them identify where are they today, what are the goals that they have, and what are the values that they want to accomplish. And so what they end up with is this large one-page financial plan. Again, this is an 11 by 17 worksheet, and there's more information that we won't get into today on the back that helps you identify, more specific information about what, kind of where you are today. But now you have, in a concise one-page snapshot, what direction are you wanting to go? What's important to you? What are the goals and milestones along the way? And where are you now? With this information, now as financial decisions come up to you, you can apply those decisions with your plan. Hey, we've got this opportunity to, invest in, my neighbor's startup. Okay, great. How does that help us have fulfillment and expression and happiness and peace? And does the illiquidity of that investment have an impact on our ability to save for college or financial independence or our farmhouse? Right? Might be, hey, well, it's probably better because we've got Ann's college coming up that we put that into a 529 plan because that'll help us, fund Ann's college faster. Or, this investment's not going to pay out for 10 years and we've got other goals that we're trying to accomplish. So maybe it's not the best time for us. So now you can use the one-page financial plan to help with your financial decision-making and have these systems in place that remind you of your priorities and your plans so you make better financial decisions. Ultimately, what this one-page financial plan will build into is this more complex plan that we talked about up here, right? We'll go through and answer all of these questions and build you a more complex financial plan, but all of it results back into the one-page plan that helps drive a lot of the decision making. And ultimately, this one-page financial plan should boil down into some concrete dynamic planning, right? And this is a tool that we use. Again, we're answering all of these questions. Where are all of my assets? What rate of return do I need? And am I currently getting? What is my risk tolerance? When should I claim Social Security? What about Medicare, IRMAA? How much do I need to retire? Will I run out of money? How long will I live? Can I travel? What about long-term care insurance or life insurance, Roth conversions? All of these things get answered. But now in a very concrete way, using a software tool that we have, that now you can move these sliders and say, well, what if I decide I want to retire at 64? How does that change my probability of being able to accomplish my financial goals? What if our healthcare expense goes up? What if we want to increase our travel budget? What about college? If that becomes more expensive or she gets a scholarship, how does that impact our ability to accomplish all of our goals? Because financial planning is more than just assets and investments in a network. It's about making sure your resources have the impact on your life and the people and causes you care about most. And so when you have complete confidence in your financial future, it gives you the ability to give back more to the things that are important to you. And it should be dynamic and address common fears and concerns. And a true financial plan allows you to run specific scenarios about when do I want to retire? How much do I want to spend? What if inflation is higher than expected? What if I get a better rate of return? What if I get a more challenging rate of return? How do all of these factor into my ability to make some good financial decisions? And again, the plan is a baseline of decision making. Plans change all the time, right? As we talked about going from New York to LA, maybe you want to stop in Texas, or maybe you want to make a detour to Florida. But now you have a plan that you can adjust that says, okay, great. Here was the original plan. We need to adjust to the new plan. And that helps you make better financial decisions. Great. So we've covered a lot in terms of the one-page financial plan, how to think about it, and how our brains process financial information. But then the question is like, okay, great, that's helpful. Now what? And we've got two suggestions for you to start to try and implement this. Obviously, the first is we'd be more than happy to sit down with you. Our initial consultation, there's no sales, there's no obligation, there's no hard press to make any kind of decisions. But what we find is having a independent third party involved in that consultation, that conversation, helps facilitate better outcomes and better communication. And what you'll see there is our link where you can just go online, check our schedule some time. We can do these via online or in our office here in Reston and really help you and your significant other
get that one-page financial plan in place. Again, no cost, no obligation, no hard sell. It just really is our way of being helpful to help people make better financial decisions. And you'll go through that and set meaningful goals in alignment with your values. You'll answer the questions about what you want your money to do for you, go through those specific milestones about timelines and amounts and how you would feel about those, and get a benchmarking of your current financial situation. We encourage you to take advantage of that. We think it's a valuable process and service that we can offer, and for no cost. The second thing is ask for our resources. After this webinar, you'll be able to see, request some resources, whether it's these slides, where you want some more information about our philosophy around values-based financial planning, or you've got specific question about investments or alternative investments, or you have specific estate planning questions or tax efficiency questions. Want to go through those and make sure you have the resources. In the end, feel free to request one of our financial roadmap worksheets that you can go through this with yourself and your significant other. And then if you run into speed bumps and like, hey, I really think we could use some help here. We tried to do it on our own. Come on in. We'd be happy to help, whether it's a Zoom or in person or even just a phone call. Our goal here is to really be helpful. And what we have found is we focus on adding value and being helpful to people, whether or not they become clients, good things happen. Right? For us, it's all about finding that right fit for you. If that's us, great, let's move forward. If not, that's okay. Hopefully, we've been helpful to you to help you find the right path for you to make good financial decisions.